I have been pondering, maybe you can help me figure it out. If a boy earned an Eagle Scout and then later in life his hair came out, would he be a bald eagle? Maybe y'all can help me figure that out. We're glad you're in Bible class tonight. Let's pray together. Our Father, we're grateful for every blessing you give us, for the opportunity, especially at this time, to open your book and study therefrom. Help us to treat it with respect and honor. Help us to learn it well. Help us to apply it to our lives. Bless the congregation that meets here. Help our sick people to recover. Help us to be of help to each other in ways that we can. And may we always live in our community and in our city and state and county in a way that will honor and glorify you. Thank you for the Christ who died for us, the Bible that guides us. In Jesus' name, amen. We are studying the Intertestament period, and I'm looking at the four kingdoms that contributed to the events that took place during that time period. And we are studying Daniel chapter 2. And we are moving through this chapter. We've seen a great deal of things. And we were down to Daniel's declaration, chapter 2, verses 25 to 30. He had told Arioch that if he were brought before Nebuchadnezzar, that he would tell him the dream, which has perplexed him, even caused him to send out a decree that all the wise men in the province be put to death, which would include Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So he had come to Arioch and said in verse 24, Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, Do not destroy the wise of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation. In verse 25, we have what I call Arioch's promptness. Then Arioch, the New King James says, quickly brought Daniel before the king. The American Standard says he brought Daniel before the king in haste and said thus to him, I have found a man of the captives. I have found a man, literally, of the sons of the captivity of Judah, who will make known to the king the interpretation. So you have the promptness of Arioch, who brings Daniel hastily before Nebuchadnezzar. You have his presentation of Daniel, a man of the children of the captivity of Judah. And you have his promise concerning Daniel. Daniel would make the interpretation of the dream known to the king. The interpretation there is a synecdoche to stand for the dream and the interpretation. And he will make this known to the king. In verse 26, you have Nebuchadnezzar's probe. And you see Nebuchadnezzar taking a stand on this to find out if Daniel really can do what he's promised to do. So in verse 26, the king addressed or answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar. So he addressed Daniel by his Babylonian name. Are you able? Look at that word. Are you able to make known unto me the dream and the interpretation. Are you able to do that? So here we're dealing with ability. All right, you're one of the wise men. I've had these men before me, and they could not do it. Are you able to do it? And so in 27 to 30, we have Daniel's pronouncement, and I believe this is about where we were at our last time together. Daniel answered in the presence of the king, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. And I've noted this in your outline as the limit pertaining to man. There's a limitation to man. And this goes back to chapter 2, verses 2, 3, and 10, about these different people in this class called the Chaldeans. And Daniel says that what you are asking is above human capacity. So Daniel takes this inquiry of Nebuchadnezzar out of the realm of humanity and puts it into the realm of spirituality. Something above natural, something above nature, supernatural. So he says they cannot declare. Don't put them to death for something they cannot do. If you kill every wise man in the province, you won't find one that can do it from a human standpoint. Now in 28 and 29, he contrasts that with the limitless power of God. Man is limited. God is not. So in verse 28, all of you have my favorite coordinating conjunction there. No man can do it, verse 27, but there is an El, a God in heaven. Now notice, verse 27, none of these can declare it to the king. All right, these wise men, none of them. So we're on earth. Nothing earthly. Or to use Paul's terminology in 1 Corinthians 15, nothing earthy. Nothing of the earth can do it. But there is a God in heaven. And you have here a contrast. No man can do it, but there is a God in heaven. And here he moves from the creature, none of these wise men can do it, to the Creator. There is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. There's a God in heaven who reveals secrets. That takes you back to verse 22. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. So he delivers secrets, reveals secrets. And then we have the content, verses 28 and 29. Daniel says, he has made known, now notice this, he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar. And that's interesting. Nebuchadnezzar can't remember the dream. He doesn't know the interpretation. But Daniel says God has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. Now notice what's going to be in the latter days. Think about that terminology. Go back to Genesis 49. Verse 1. Genesis 49, verse 1. What is going to be, he says, made known to you in later days or latter days, what is going to take place somewhat similar to the terminology last days. It's made known what's going to take place in the latter days. And in Genesis 49:1, Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather together that I may tell you what shall befall you, do all of you have in the last days." Everybody have that? That's the first use of that statement, that phrase in the Bible. Jacob says, I'm going to tell you the future. I'm going to tell you what's going to come to pass in the future. And here he refers to it as the latter days. All right, go to Isaiah chapter 2. Isaiah 2, beginning verse 1, the word that Isaiah, the son of Amoz, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Now it shall come to pass, do you all have, in the latter days. Everybody have that? In the latter days. And he follows that by giving 9 descriptions of the church. Lord willing, we'll get to that on our Sunday morning study of New Testament fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. But it's going to take place in the latter days. Now, Isaiah and Micah are contemporaries. Micah began to prophesy later than Isaiah, after Isaiah had already started. But Micah ended earlier than Isaiah. When Micah ended prophesying, Isaiah was still continuing to prophesy. And you have a parallel to Isaiah 2 and Micah 4. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days. And this is parallel to Isaiah 2, 2 to 4. What Micah here says, in Micah 4, 1 to 3, you have a parallel of what is being said. And you notice that is set in the latter days. Now go to Daniel chapter 10. And notice in verse 1, this is in the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia. A message was revealed to Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. The message was true, but the appointed time was long, and he understood the message and had understanding of the vision. All right, you drop down to verse 10. Suddenly a hand touched me, which made me tremble on my knees and on the palms of my hands. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you and stand upright. For I have now been sent to you While he was speaking this word to me, I stood trembling. Then he said to me, "Do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. And behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the kings of Persia. Now I have come to make you understand," notice it, "what will happen to your people, the Jews, in the latter days. For the vision refers to many days yet to come." So when Daniel says to Nebuchadnezzar, "God has made known to you what is going to take place in the latter days, in the last days," we are projecting in time. There's going to be some time elapse before all of this comes to full fruition. So, he makes known why Nebuchadnezzar had the dream. Hasn't told him the dream yet, but he tells him why he had it. What you dreamed was a communication from God to you about what's going to happen in the latter days. In verse 30 of Daniel 2, you have the lack of pride on Daniel's part. Notice, the God of heaven has made known to you what will be. But, all of you have that? But as for me, all right, you have Daniel here contrasted with the God of heaven. God of heaven made it known to you. But as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me, because I have more wisdom than anyone living. Go back to the earlier part of chapter 2 and look at how God blessed Daniel with knowledge, blessings above the others. But Daniel says, "It's not because I have any superior knowledge to anyone on the earth, to any other human being. This secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living." All right, so you have here divine wisdom contrasted with human wisdom. Incidentally, you have the very same contrast in 1 Corinthians 1 and 2 in a different context. Turn back to Genesis 41. In Genesis chapter 41, look at verse 16. Joseph answered Pharaoh. Now Joseph is there to interpret Pharaoh's dream. Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, "It is not in me." All right, Daniel said, "The secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living. It is not in me. Elohim will give Pharaoh an answer of peace." So I don't have the human wisdom to answer Pharaoh, but there is wisdom that will be revealed and will give Pharaoh an answer. Turn to Acts chapter 3. Peter and John were going up to the temple to pray at the hour of prayer, and they healed a man who was lame. Verse 11, now as the lame man who was healed held on to Peter and John, all the people ran together to them in the porch, which is called Solomon's, greatly amazed. So when Peter saw, he responded to the people, men of Israel, why do you marvel at this? Or why look so intently at us? They were staring at them, gazing at them. As though, now notice it, by our own power or godliness we had made this man walk. Why are you looking at us like we did this based on earthly ability? And he moves to say, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of our fathers, glorified his servant Jesus, whom you delivered up and denied in the presence of Pilate when he was determined to let him go. But you denied the Holy One and the just, and asked for a murderer to be granted to you, and killed the Prince of Life, whom God raised from the dead, of which we are witnesses. And his name, the Prince of Life, his name, through faith in his name, has made this man strong, whom you see and know. Yes, the faith which comes through him has given him this perfect soundness in the presence of you all. Why are you looking at us like we could do this? That's a far cry from these fake healers that you see on television who want all the credit. Look at what we're doing. Send your money to us. And Peter and John say, we didn't do this. God did. So that's what Daniel is saying here. As for me, this secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living. Circle it. But here is why this secret has been revealed to me. But for our sakes, who make known the interpretation to the king. All right, this dream was given to him by God. For our sakes, who make known the interpretation to the king, and that you may know, understand, the thoughts of your heart, the thoughts of your mind, that you may know what you dreamed and why, that you can't remember now. Turn to Psalms 139. Psalms 139. When we studied this psalm, I gave you a threefold outline of the psalm. Some of you were not here when I studied this psalm, so I'll give you the outline in case you'd like to have it. Verses 1 to 6, the omniscience of Jehovah. Verses 1 to 6, the omniscience, all-knowingness of Jehovah. Verses 7 to 12, the omnipresence of Jehovah. Verses 13 to 18, the omnipotence of Jehovah. That's an outline of the first 18 verses. having to do with Jehovah. Our concern tonight is with the first two. O Jehovah, you have searched me and known me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought afar off. Daniel said, God has revealed this dream to me that you may know the thoughts of your heart. God knows them, and He has revealed them to me so you can understand them from His ability. Look also at Amos 4. Amos 4, verse 13. For behold, He who forms mountains and creates the wind, or the Spirit is the Hebrew word, the ruach, who declares to man what his thought is. Notice that. He declares to man what his thought is, and makes the morning darkness, who treads the high places of the earth. Jehovah, the God of hosts, is His name. So Daniel says, my ability is a revelation from Jehovah, or this Aramaic word, El-Al, a revelation. So, we're dealing here with revelation. God has revealed to you what's going to take place in the latter days, in the future. God has revealed this unto you so that you may know what the thoughts are. So beginning in verse 31, going through verse 35, you have God's disclosure of the dream. In verse 31, you have the sight Nebuchadnezzar saw. You, O king, were watching. Now notice this is going to have to do with the future. It may be that when Nebuchadnezzar went to sleep, he was contemplating his kingdom, where it would go, what it would be. When we get to chapter 4, we're going to see he apparently did that a good bit. And so he says, you, O king, were watching. You watching in your dream. And behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. The American Standard, this image, which was mighty and whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the aspect thereof was terrible. And terrible means awesome in our modern language, refers to that which brings fear on someone. The brightness references the splendor of it. The word excellent indicates surpassing. Surpassed anything he had ever seen or contemplated. And you probably have seen, and you teachers probably have posters on this image. You have the great image and what Nebuchadnezzar saw. So you saw a great image. Now, in the next two verses, you have the different aspects of this image. Verse 32, This image's head was of fine gold. All right? So the head of this terrible image, this fearful image, a head of fine gold, the very best. Its chest and arms of silver. Is silver inferior or superior to gold? It's inferior. So we're coming down in graduation. So you see these two aspects of it. Its belly and thighs you have brass, very likely, King James, American Standard. Probably more accurate, bronze. So you have the belly and thighs of brass or of bronze. Then he moves to verse 33 as we have it. Its legs of iron. Inferior or superior? We're coming down. So each part of this image gets less significant as far as not importance, but as far as value in earthly things would be concerned. Its feet, partly of iron and partly of clay. All right, you see this image. Part of iron, part of clay. And this great image is before Nebuchadnezzar. So you have a mixture here. Is going to be a significant point on the feet. But then he saw something else. You watched, you're dreaming this, while a stone was cut out without hands. All right, a stone. You saw this stone cut out of a mountain, cut out of rock, but no hands did it. You just saw it cut out. A stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. The stone. Now, if you broke the feet of it, what happened? What would happen? It'd fall. So it's losing stability, losing ability to stand. And the text says, smote this image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together. All crushed together. All right? Broken in pieces together. And notice, and became chaff. that what your book says? One little old word. Doesn't become chaff. It became like chaff, like the husks of the grain, from the summer threshing floors. That tells you when the grain was on the threshing floor. Became like the grain of the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. Now, if you're teaching this to boys and girls, do you skip this part? What do you tell them about what happened? Summer threshing floors. What does that mean to us? Go to Psalms 1. You know, in verses 1 to 3, you have the blessed man. And one of the things he does not do is walk in the counsel of the ungodly, the wicked. Or you get down to verse 4. The ungodly, the wicked, are not so. They're not like this blessed man who prospers. Circle it. Contrast. They're not like the blessed man, the oh, how blessed man that prospers, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Now they're on the threshing floor and they have this, and they take the grain, they throw it up into the air, and the strong breeze coming off of the Mediterranean Sea blows the husks off, and the grain falls to the floor of the threshing. And when that's all done, the chaff has been blown away. The husks are gone. And what you have left is the grain. Then they scoop it and store it. So this is the simile that's used here. Turn to Isaiah 17. This is a familiar simile in the Bible. Isaiah 17, verse 15. Nope, that's the wrong reference. Unless somebody wrote a verse I didn't get. Verse 13. The nations will rush like the rushing of many waters, but God will rebuke them, and they will flee far away and be chased like the chaff of the mountains. Look at it. Before the wind. They're going to flee like the chaff is blown away. Turn to Isaiah. Isaiah 41, verse 15. Behold, I will make you into a new threshing sledge with sharp teeth. You shall thresh the mountains and beat them small and make the hills like chaff. You shall winnow them. That's what this process is called, winnowing the wheat, getting the chaff blown away. You shall winnow them. The wind shall carry them away, and the whirlwind shall scatter them. You shall rejoice in Jehovah and glory in the Holy One of Israel. to stand firm against opposition that comes. And here's the simile. And then look at Hosea 13. Hosea 13, verse 3. Let's start in verse 1. When Ephraim spoke, trembling, he exalted himself in Israel. But when he offended through Baal, he died. Now they sin more and more and have made for themselves molded images, idols of their silver according to their skill, and all of it is the work of craftsmen. They say of them, let the men who sacrifice kiss the calves. Conclusion. Therefore they shall be like the morning cloud, and like the early dew that passes away, like the chaff blown off from a threshing floor, and like smoke from a chimney. Those idols are going to be totally destroyed and moved away. So there's your picture. This image, great, terrible, awesome, fear-inspiring. But there's a stone cut out without hands. So here we're dealing with the supernatural. It strikes this image on its feet, part iron, part clay. The image collapses, crushed together, blown away like chaff, totally removed by this stone. And verse 35 says that this wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. So that Nebuchadnezzar saw all this. And that may be why he could not remember all of it or remember it. It was so fear-inspiring to him. No place found. Turn to Psalms 37. Verse 10. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall be no more. Indeed, you will look carefully for his place, but it shall be no more. Completely done away. Drop down to verse 36. Yet he passed away. Behold, he was no more. Indeed, I sought him, but he could not be found. So Nebuchadnezzar saw this great image. It inspired fear, made of all these components. And then he saw a stone cut out without hands that broke this image in pieces. This would indicate divine action. No one cut that stone out, no human. No human threw it at the image, but he saw it cut out and come and smite the legs, or rather the feet, saw the image collapse, and then it was blown away. So that's part of it. It was gone. No trace of them was found. But that's not all. Nebuchadnezzar saw the stone that struck the image, and the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. All right, he saw this stone destroy this image. Become a great mountain. Now, he was cut out of a mountain, or cut out. Seems to be implied, some kind of stone structure. But it turned into a great mountain itself, whereas this had been there, it's gone, and this great mountain fills the entirety of the earth. Nebuchadnezzar saw all of this, this great image. Now, I am guessing all of you have been through this material. Is that correct? All of you have studied the great image. Is that right? Anyone here who hasn't? So I'm not dealing with new ground here. We're simply looking at what Nebuchadnezzar saw, that Daniel now has told him the dream. Now that's half of it. I have made known to you the dream. And so he says in verse 36, this is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. Now Nebuchadnezzar has said, tell me the dream and the interpretation. Now question, if you were Nebuchadnezzar at this point, would you believe Daniel could give you the interpretation of this dream? Why?
Because Daniel's given him the groundwork as far as what everything meant that he was dreaming.
He's shown him the dream. Why would you think Nebuchadnezzar would think he can give me the interpretation?
He's laying it out step for step.
Yeah,
He can or can't give it to me.
he can. Would Nebuchadnezzar think he can give me the interpretation?
Because the dream wasn't known by anybody else other than Nebuchadnezzar.
Now, he didn't know it.
That's right, actually, he didn't know it.
So no one knew it.
Yeah, and so,
But when Daniel told it, evidently he recognized it.
yeah.
So that would generate faith, wouldn't it? From the revelation. Hold that thought. Thank you for listening.